real estate. I love this business. I don't do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. I intend to make millions and millions of dollars off of this down market by by acquiring properties today at dirt cheap prices, and then somehow figuring out a way to survive for the next 10 years to enjoy the rewards. So thanks for coming out tonight. Jeremy and I, we have a million ideas, and we love to share them with people. And we're, we have some businesses that we're involved with. This gives us an opportunity to tell you about them. And we also, so part of this is an educational meeting, and part of it is a networking meeting. Networking in this business is absolutely critical. So a lot of meetings, they just have a meeting and there's a speaker and speaker talks, and you do some networking a little before, a little after, and that's it. Well, here we have more of like an organized networking. So what we do is we're going to break this meeting up. We got started a little bit late, so we'll probably break it up like, I don't know, just before 9. And then we go over to Bertucci's, because there's no better way to network with someone than drink them under the table. So over a pizza too. So we like to go over there and just leave your books in the car and stuff and go over there. Jeremy has a book for sale called The Ultimate Success Secret that he was an author in on a chapter in that book. I have my book, Addicted to Real Estate. If anybody wants to check it out while we're talking, you can I'll just pass them around, and if you want to buy one, we'll autograph it for you at the end of the meeting. They're each $20. $20 for 20 years experience, so that's only $1 a year. Okay. So tonight the topic that we wanted to share with you is seller financing. A lot of people will, if you go to real estate meetings, a lot of people will say, yeah, I know about seller financing. I know what it is, and they may have heard of it or something, but it doesn't mean that they're doing it. And it takes some education, and it takes some time to really look for these kind of deals. They don't just pop out of the woods. You gotta dig for them. You gotta look for them. But when you find them and you structure a good one, man, it's a great way to build your net worth and to build your cash flow. And it doesn't take that many seller finance deals to accelerate your net worth tremendously. So that's the topic of tonight, and that's what we want to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this subject off to Jeremy Ricci, who is by far the most knowledgeable person on seller financing that I've ever met. So, Jeremy Ricci.
Okay. Good job, Jeremy. So, yeah, I mean, this owner financing thing that Phil basically said that, now's the time in this market with the banks the way they are, the lending the way it is. I mean, there's a couple mortgage guys in here. I know Justin is, and Skip's a mortgage guy. Any other mortgage people in the room? But there's, you're seeing it. They're giving out a lot less loans. They take your application, and then they won't not take your application, but they'll take your application and they'll just wait, and then you get we need more stuff, and then you get the denial, and then you get, So we're hearing a lot about that happening. Now I've been buying real estate for 9 or 10 years now. So it's April Fool's Day 2002, I think, was my first day self-unemployed, and that April Fool's Day, ever since then, never bought a house with a bank. So I've always used seller financing. So we'll talk about some of the different types of seller financing and the ways that you go about getting these sellers to involving the sellers in the financing. So anybody here ever bought a house with the owner financing? Anyone? Skip? You bought a house with owner financing? Okay. So the power in the owner financing is the flexibility. I've also never bought a house that was listed for sale. I've always been belly to belly with the sellers, at the coffee table, or in their kitchen, sitting at the kitchen table, and doing deals because I really think that the deal is not about the numbers. It's not about this paperwork volleyball that you play, ping pong, where you make an offer and then they counter offer, you make an offer and then they counter offer. that's what the traditional real estate world does. That's what, you know, most realtors do. It used to be that realtors back in, 30 years ago, from what my mentors have always told me, is that the realtors were really the people, and the real estate agents were the people that could make a sale, make a deal happen, because they would know have all these tools with, you know, installment sales and you know, agreement for deed, same thing, all the different contracts and options, and you know, really putting these deals together and constructing a well thought out deal. Back in the Carter administration, when you had interest rates in like the 17s and with 14 points or whatever it was, I'm sure it wasn't that high, but they were pretty high. Back then, you had to do seller financing, because the banks, you know, nobody could make, you know, there's people that would get those loans, but most of the time they couldn't make them work. So, you know, back in those high interest days, seller financing was very, very prominent. Now, the interest rates are really low. It's not that. It's the availability of credit that the banks really aren't lending. And, you know, they're getting handouts from the government. So, you know, and they're doing a lot of fee structuring too, where they're making money off their depositors with different fees that they're putting in place. So I think that's why this you know, seller financing is important more than ever right now. I mean, when I go to a seller and I'm talking about seller financing, the basis of every transaction is the people that are in the deal have to be happier after the deal is done than they were before the deal was done. And it doesn't mean to be happiest. It doesn't mean to be jumping in their shoes. They just need to be better off, happier than they were before the transaction. And if that's not the case, absent of coercion, a transaction won't take place. So if they're under duress or something, then they might sign something they wouldn't normally sign. But pretty much before the transaction, they have a certain set of, I'm not going to draw, but they have a certain set of attributes that they have. Let's say they have a property with stairs and they want a single floor property. Well, you can't really put a dollar value on that, you know? You can't say, well, a single floor property is worth a lot more than this two-story property, but to them it is. And value is subjective. Value is not objective. An appraiser can walk in the room and say, well, this is what this house is worth. But to them, they have stairs to deal with. They have somebody that broke their hip last week, that the house no longer meets their needs. And to them, it's not about what's this appraisal worth, what's this appraisal worth. It's about, this house isn't working for me anymore. I'm in that situation. I have you know, I'm in a situation where I need to either add on or move, because I have 3 kids now, and we have a 3-bedroom house. So, you know, my wife and I, we share a room.
That's good news.
My daughter has her own room, and I have 2 sons. They're 6 and 2, about to be 2, and they share a room right now. So, you know, they're getting, as they get older, I got to think about a 4th bedroom. So, a 4th bedroom either is going to happen with another house, or it's going to happen by, you know, putting an addition on my house, right? And then you got to deal with the township red tape of your septic system's not big enough and all this other junk. So, you know, you understand, like, I'm actually going to be in that same situation where, like, the house no longer meets my needs. I'm going to need something different. And to me, the value is not in money. So when somebody says, you know, how much for your house, and they say, I need so much, I need cash. They don't need cash. Nobody needs cash. Absolutely nobody. You want to challenge me on that? If you went into a seller's house and they say, look, I need $100,000 and I need cash. You say to them, all right, well, if I give you $100,000 cash, and we'll just pile it up on your dining room table, and then I'll have your house, I'll have the deed to your house, and you'll have the cash. And then we'll circle back like 6 months from now. I want to come over, and can I come by in 6 months and let's just stare at that big pile of cash? Can we do that? And what do you think they say? No, it's not there anymore. Well, what do you mean? You said you wanted cash. You know, if you want the cash, just put it here and have it as a little, you know, centerpiece. It's what the cash can do for them that's really the important thing. And what it can do for them is not monetary. What it can do for them is, my daughter's going to college in 3 years. What it can do for them is, we want to buy a motorhome and travel around the country. We have 5 grandkids, and we really want them to have a great Christmas every year. So these are the things that you have to think about when the needs of the seller aren't these monetary needs. They translate into real, like, human needs, like when you're dealing with real people. And it's all about caring enough about the seller to give them what they want while you still get what you want out of it. So if anybody thinks like, man, I got a great deal, I got a great deal. If you didn't get a great deal, you don't find deals out there in the marketplace. Deals are created by the meeting of the minds. And this whole paperwork ping pong, it's like, how could you ever have a meeting of the minds if the minds never actually meet? That's, I mean, I've sometimes it's hard. I mean, sometimes Phil and I own a real estate brokerage, and you know, we have agents that work for us. We have a lot of investor-friendly agents. We have a lot of investors that are also agents. And typically, and I don't know where this comes from. How many realtors are in the room, or agents anyway? I don't know where this comes from, but a lot of times, you know, they have this thing that, I don't know if it's from school or it's just something that they were taught with, but they want to keep the seller and the buyer away from each other. Maybe they think they're going to have like a conflict of personalities. But I always think, bring those people together, because when you bring them together, you can then make a deal. And that's when you can make a deal. Because you say, well, I made you this offer. Why, you know, what is it about the offer you don't like? And now you can really get into that conversation. And if I was a real estate agent, then I think I would want that to happen more often than not.
I know a commercial realtor who put a buyer and seller together. They had an argument over a water heater. $1 million building deal blew up, and he never again would ever let a buyer anywhere near a seller. But you know, I think it was just like some things happen sometimes, and probably, you know, it's much better to put them together and understand where their heads are at if you're having trouble getting a deal done.
Yeah, if you can't get a deal done, it's one thing. If the deal's a done deal, they've accepted it, you know, then at that point it's a moot. But typically, the deals that I make are really structured deals that really I'm looking at what are the needs of the seller and how can I meet those needs. I've offered, you know, I have an extra car right now. I've offered my car as a down payment on a property where the lady said, look, I want to sell my house, I need to get a car. I said, oh, well, I got a car. Is that what you're looking for? I can give you a car as a down payment, and I'll just owe you the rest. You know, so that's, and it's kind of using what you already have, or using what you can easily get. I've have friends that have given boats as down payments on houses, or give another house and as a down payment on a house. We have some land right now in Percy that I'd love to give that land as a down payment on like an apartment building, because when it's tough to sell something, don't be, you know, if you're a seller, you're kind of in a place of weakness when you're a seller. But when you're a buyer, you're in a place of strength, especially in this marketplace. So my goal right now is, instead of trying to sell this land, I'm going to try to buy something with the land as a down payment. So now I'm a buyer and say, I'll buy your building for $1 million. Here's land as a down payment. It's my earnest deposit, you know. And there could be, you know, somebody that takes that deal. They don't want the hassle of tenants, but they wouldn't mind sitting on some acreage that when building comes back up, they could build on and make some profit. So, any questions about that? Just kind of, you know, addressing an offer to meet the seller's needs, and you know, really caring enough about them to come together and make a deal. Any questions?
Jeremy, what if you don't have a boat, or you don't have a piece of land, or something else big enough to put as a down payment? How else would you pitch
Well,
them?
it's not necessarily what you have, but it's also what you can get too. So, you know, we made a deal with a lady, and the whole reason that she said, I need $5,000 down. And I said, well, what is the $5,000 mean to you? And she goes, well, that's a Dodge Charger for me. So I said, okay, well, I have a buddy that's a wholesaler and a car wholesaler. So maybe I can go to him and say, hey, go to the auction, and what can we get one of these things for? Because if I can get it at an auction price, and let's say it cost me $3,000, you know, she said $5,000. Well, heck, I can just give her the thing that she wants, and it only cost me $3,000, but the value to her is $5,000. You got it? So I mean, it's all about, you know, and not every time can you make these things fall into place. Sometimes cash has to be the equalizer, but there's often times that people will take something else. Most of the times, your currency in the exchange of a house, for most of my currency in the exchange for a house, is typically a promise. So it's a promise to pay somebody. So say, you give me your house and I'll give you a promise. And that's how it goes down. So if same thing, you know, one of the other types of seller financing, what I call seller financing, is a subject to deal. You're taking over somebody's payments. You're buying the house subject to an existing mortgage. The seller already has that financing in place. So I really consider like buying a house subject to the mortgage, leaving that payment in place, another form of seller financing. They're still involved in it, you know, they're still on the loan. So, another question?
Jeremy, a lot of sellers are concerned about the liability of having the loan still in their name. So how do you make them feel comfortable with an offer like that?
There's a couple ways. Well, the first thing is that, you know, they're probably, I wouldn't sell somebody a house and leave it in my name unless I had some sort of guarantee or performance bond or something, right? But there are people who would. It's almost like when you hire an employee and you're like, man, I can't find the right employee, I've been trying 3 or 4 different people. Well, you just haven't found the right one that when you find it, you'll say, wow, this is the right person. Same thing with sellers. I mean, when you say, well, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that. There's most of the loans that we've taken over have been in arrears, they've been behind on payments. Or we're coming in reinstating the payments and then taking the loan over from there. So like they're, you know, pre-foreclosure stage or what have you. And when we're making up their payments, we're actually taking them out of a bad situation and put them into a better, not the best situation, but better. Because they say, you know, they typically say to me, well, what happens if you don't make the payments? I said, well, then you'd be no worse off than you were when you weren't making the payments, right? So I'm actually saying, well, geez, each and every month that I'm making your payments, it's going as a positive on your credit report. And frankly, we have deals that houses that we've owned for years, that we actually get credit card offers to our office for these people because their credit is now good because we're making the payments. So I feel a little guilty about that because it's almost like their credit's good, but not because of them. You know? So it's like, oh geez, I'm worried that they're going to go out to like Volkswagen Credit and go sign for a car that, you know, oh, you got great credit. You know? So, but you know, the other thing is the other kind of if you want to know like some of my canned phrases that I use, one of them is saying like, geez, if I were to take over your payments, like I only get paid when this thing sells down the road, because right now, you know, it's not a selling market, so I get paid down the road. So that would kind of be, if I were to not make your payments, that would be kind of like me showing up for work from Monday through Thursday and not coming in Friday to collect my paycheck. Because my paycheck comes when I can resell this house to some end user down the road. So if I don't make your payments, I don't have any chance of making a profit. So that's one of the, you know, the objection handlers that I use with that. Does that help?
Yes.
When you're going in and discussing seller financing with a seller, you know, when you may look very much like a weak buyer when you're offering somebody, look, I'll give you, you know, $5,000 down and maybe $1,000 a month. I mean, that looks like a pretty weak buyer. But you look like a very strong tenant to them, right? So typically, what does a tenant give? They give first month, last month, right? And you know, so they're coming in with $2,000, let's say, or maybe $3,000, $2,500. But you come in and say, look, I'll give you $5,000 or $10,000 down and $1,000 a month. If this is like a landlord, you look like a really strong tenant. Now to somebody else, that's just you know, to a bank, you're going to make that offer. They're going to say no because you look like a really weak buyer. So you understand that one of the targeted markets to hit is landlords and retiring landlords. Retiring landlords, you know, what is it that they have? They have real estate that produces some income for them, right? What is it that they also have is management. And as somebody gets older, that's not a currency, you know, that they're willing to give up some cash flow in exchange for some free time away from that management. So can you all see, I mean, that's really a good offer to make to people that are what I call retiring landlords. The other one is tired landlords. Tired landlords are, you know, average life expectancy is 3 years of a landlord. I mean, not that they die, but that they stop landlord. So you got that as well. So, good.
For the landlord question, what kind of terms would you offer that as far as they, you know, a lot of times they just want cash out.
Yeah, so what kind of terms would you offer then?
Yeah.
The terms, have to make sense for them, they have to make sense for you. So again, it's all about what their situation is and what they're doing. A lot of times, I'll approach them and say, let's look at your current cash flow situation. So I'm saying, how much do you get for rent? How much of that goes towards taxes and insurance? How much of that do you allocate for vacancy and management? Now, if they're not, they say, well, I don't have a management company. I say, well, yeah, but you're taking the time to do it yourself, so your time isn't free, you're gonna pay yourself something. So typically, 15% is a good number for vacancy and management, maybe even 25%. If you include vacancy and management altogether. So, you're gonna appraiser over here questioning it. But I'm thinking, 15. If you have 15%, call it 10% management, 5% vacancy. I think that's pretty low. I think it's low. I think you need to be in like the 20% range for your vacancy and for your management. So take out the taxes, take out the insurance, take out the vacancy and management piece of it, and you look at their tax returns, like repairs as well, and what their net is on their tax return. You could probably afford to give them that. You could probably afford to give them that each month, if it was great terms. So one of the things that I learned from my mentors, and if you haven't seen, one of the most creative guys that I've learned from, his name's Peter Fortunato. PeterFortunato.com. He's been an uber mentor of mine, and he's been very willing to help me in any kind of deals that I'm trying to structure. But he always said, look, I can buy your house either two ways. I can buy it at a wholesale price, or I could buy it at a retail price, but with wholesale terms. And if you tell that to people, then they know why you're in it. Hey, we're in it to make a profit. There's got to be some wholesale level here. We got to do wholesale price, which is what Eric will go in and make it, and Ed too. I mean, you just get the wholesalers and Frank. You go in and they make an all cash offer at a wholesale price, right? That's the game. Now that's the only game if you're going to sit there and turn around and resell it right away. But if the idea is to have a house long term and actually have this asset produce you cash flow, produce some net worth for you, you can make. If somebody in this room says they had a house that anybody here willing to sell their house to me for $1 million? So that was how many bedrooms do you have?
1.5.
Okay, so I'll have to give you
4 bed, 2 bath.
I'll give you 3, 4 bed. I won't do that one. I'll give you $1,000 a month until paid. What's that? 10,000 months. So no, 1,000 months. $1,000 a month for 1,000 months. So you see, like you can pay $1 million. It's just a matter of when. I can give you any price you want. It's just a matter of when. So obviously that's an exaggeration. But I have an appointment on Monday to go look at a house where a realtor came out and they said, look, the realtor told us our house will be worth $250 after it's all said and done. And my first offer to them was $267. And here's how I can do $267. I'll give you $110 down and $157 10 years from now. So you just 2 payments. So that's you're talking about cash flow is one of the huge things. I should really draw a. Let's see if I can do this here.
Yeah. But again, I guess it's a little
Some smells. So first thing, all the benefits, the badges and burdens of a house are all the reasons that somebody would do a deal. So you have to split them up and say, what are the things that we can split up in a deal here? So the foundation of every transaction is the security of all the parties. So you want to know that the people want to know that they're protected. Especially if you're gonna give payments to them over 30 years, 20 years, they want to know that that they're protected. They're gonna lean against the property. Maybe they want if they're savvy, they might want to have like a confession of judgment against you, things like a hard money lender might ask. They might want to have a deed in escrow. I mean, those aren't things that I offer, but if somebody asked me for them, I wouldn't mind doing that kind of stuff. So making sure that you're secure in the transaction, making sure that they're secure in the transaction. What else do we have here? We have one of the benefits of owning real estate is the use of the real estate. So when you're doing seller financing, typically you're getting the use of the property. So if you're buying a house, you get use of the property. If you're leasing the property, you get use of the property, right? So there are different kinds of documents you can use when you're doing either seller financing or any transaction. There's this part we'll call growth. Growth is something that you can participate in or not participate in. You can. Has anybody here ever done like a sandwich lease, like that, or a sandwich lease? I mean, if you don't have an option to buy that house, all you're making is cash flow. You don't have any upside, right? You don't get any growth. The lease just controls the use of the property. It also controls the management, which I guess we'll add in here somewhere. Thrill of management. I don't know if that's a benefit, but. And then what else do you have? You have tax bennies, which is like your, number one is your depreciation of the property. So these are all things when you're structuring a deal to think about. What did I miss here? Profit. That's more the profit is more, the buy sell stuff. You get profit. People that are flippers are used to getting profit. Growth is an investor term. That's for, I'm going to hang on to the thing, I'll get growth. And use management, tax benefits, profit, security, growth. Oh, this one's good. Income. So these are all kind of like the way you can slice and dice a house. I don't know that. If you're buying on owner financing, we're talking about like the retiring landlords. What is it that they have right now? They have income, they have management, they have growth. Do they have tax benefits? Yes. Now they're retiring. So typically, if they've owned the house a long time, they probably don't have too many tax benefits. They lost their depreciation, it's gone, 27.5 years. So they probably don't have the tax benefits anymore. Sometimes they do. Profit's not an issue. Security, well, we don't know about that. And they don't have use either, because that's, use is only when it's not rented, they have use. So somebody that's selling their house, that's a retiring landlord, they probably would like to get rid of, they'd probably be willing to get rid of management and growth if they could only get income. And what's the other thing that they might want? So somebody that's retiring, what do they want?
Security.
Security,
Time.
that's true. Time. So if you can give them time, and you can give them the income that they're used to, they might very well say, look, I'll take the management with it. We'll gladly do that. And hey, we're retiring. We don't really need the growth. This house has done well for us, but we do live on the income, so we like that. So if you can continue to give them some income, maybe not as much as they're getting, and their trade-off is they get to go free. They get to go on vacation. They get to go enjoy themselves. You see how that's a powerful conversation to have with somebody, where it's all the give and take. Look, I don't need all the benefits, but I'll take some of them and I'll leave you with some of them. So, any questions about this? All right, so there's also different structures with owner financing. I mean, typical owner financing deal, I'm going in there and I'm paying them a retail price, or especially some people are very price sensitive. So there's a certain price they say we're going to be. My first office that I bought was it was 2 retail stores side by side, and the guy wanted $100,000 for these 2 little retail stores, and he just wouldn't budget $100,000. Place needed a lot of work, so I said, look, I was like stubborn in my own head, saying there's no way it's worth that. There's no way it's worth that. And I thought about it, like the guy wants $100,000, give him $100,000. So then you say to him, well, what do you need the $100,000 for? And that's something that's a tough question to ask, but it's an easy question for them to answer. Sometimes they won't, but if you ask somebody, if I gave you all cash for this place, what are you going to do with the money? And they'll often say, well, it's none of your business. And you say, well, it's my money. I want to know what you're going to do with it. So
Next.
Sometimes that works. And when you get into it, it's really the needs. Like this guy, I said, what does this $100,000 mean to you? And he says, well, I need to get myself a car, okay? I need to be able to pay my taxes every year because I'm on a fixed income, okay? I need to pay for my homeowner's insurance and my car insurance. Okay, got it. I said, that doesn't sound to me like that's a $100,000 problem. That sounds to me like that's a $500 a month problem. You know, because for $500 a month, you can get a car, you can, pay your insurance, pay your tax. So he said, well, it was about a $630 a month problem. So that's the deal we made. We said, look, I'll give you $630 a month until paid on $100,000. He said, well, I'm going to need $25,000 down. Okay, what do you need the $25,000 for? He said, well, this one store here, I know I'm not open for business anymore, but I use this one store as a leather repair shop. And what I do is I make Civil War replica, Civil War belts and Civil War ammo pouches and all this stuff. So he said, I have all my machines here, and if I move, I'm going to need a garage that I'm going to have to build on the side of my house so I can put all these machinery, and I need to pay for the electrical wiring and all that stuff happen. So you realize it's not $25,000 that he needs a place to work. So what do I offer him? I said, tell you what, I have 2 retail stores here. I don't even need all of this retail store. How about I just take the front half and you can be in the back half, and we'll just, you and I and your leather machines will share a bathroom. And I'll just rent out the other half to a tenant. And he goes, oh, well in that case, I don't need the $25,000. So, I mean, just the power behind saying, why do you need the money? Saved me $100,000, and then it saved me $25,000. And that's just all about caring enough about the needs of the seller to ask them, what's in it for them? What's in it for you? If I give you $100 grand, what's in it for you? So it's just, the deal beyond the deal is kind of just probing a little bit more. And I'm not, I'm saying it in a conversational way. I'm saying, what do you need the 25 for? And that made the deal happen. I bought that house for retail stores I still own them in Hatboro. And they were $1,000 down. And one of his other things was, well, look, I got to get this place cleaned up. I got to get this place cleaned up. We can't settle. We can't settle. He kept postponing settlement. I said, tell you what, I'll buy it from you now. I'll give you the $1,000 down, and we'll just agree that I'll pay you 3 months. I'll start paying you 3 months from the day that you have the place room swept and cleaned out. And we'll draw up a little letter here. Here's the letter. It says, I agree the place is broom swept. I'll start making my payments on X. And we both sign that letter, and 3 months from then we start making the payments. And we closed that deal. And he was there for 6 months cleaning the place. But I owned it all the while, just because that was another concern. That kept the deal from happening. So I said, look, he didn't want to be under pressure to clean it out expeditiously. So he just said, I said, all right, that's not a problem. I just don't want to have my payments start until I get access to the property. I need a couple more months to fix it up. So that's just kind of like, all right, tell me what you need, I'll tell you what I need, and you understand I can't start paying you until I have a tenant in here. I can't start paying you while you're still in here, of course. So that's all, just the engineering of the transaction. So,
Did he realize that you would have taken that deal in a heartbeat and cleaned it up yourself?
A lot of the houses that I've dealt with were situations where people don't want to sell a house because they want to clean it out, are usually people that have, or either pack rats or hoarding syndrome or a situation like that. And when that's the case, they want to go through everything. They want to actually open every box, see what's in there, make sure they're not throwing it. They won't take a box. Now, Phil will take, if you leave a check on the table, he'll throw it away.
Yeah.
That's not true.
And I'll be looking for it in a week.
Yeah. Phil throws everything away, and then the next day he goes, "Where is that thing?" Like, you threw it away. But some people hang on to this stuff, and they hang on to, I got the loan on, I got my car loan from TD Bank, and the day that I got my car loan, the guy gave me this pen. So I'm not going to throw that away. That's my pen, and that's actually the mentality of what goes on.
I like that.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens. So, this situation wasn't so bad. I mean, I've had houses. The very first house I bought, I flipped the house, bought it for 50, sold it for 65, all in the same closing. And the contractors that I sold it to, they took 7 30-yard dumpsters full of trash out before they actually saw the carpets. So 7, and this is a tiny 4-bedroom Cape Cod that was in Horsham, not too far from here. So, I mean, there's, you know,
Wow.
and one of the things is, so, you know, in that situation, the guy says, I need to go through everything. And I said, all right, well, why don't you make a list of all the things that you want out of the house, and we'll get them out for you. So instead of like, not what you don't want, tell me what you want, and I'll get it out. You know, and that's how we made that deal happen.
I have a story just to share with everybody on that positive
Yeah.
note. I walk neighborhoods very often, and I came upon a woman who was very depressed walking with a dog. And I approached her about if it was something I could help her with. And she just shrugged off, no, you know, I'm just having a bad day. Well, the bad day ended up being a gold mine for me, because her bad day, and talking with her and kind of breaking the ice, she needed to move to Florida, and she had a fully paid off house and needed to go in 2 weeks. So I then, of course, nurtured that immediate, situation, and I carry an arsenal with me of different types of phone numbers for help hotlines for different kinds of issues. So I told her, let me go to my car, I have a couple of phone numbers for you to call that will be assistance to relocate you. Now, I have an investor who could take your house right away, and let's just find out what you need to go. So within that, now, sounds like it's easy, this happened within 15 minutes of meeting her. But then I went and had tea at the house, very nice house, and the long story short, the investor I brought this contact to took the house over. She got the money she needed to leave, to go down in 2 weeks. He bought the airfare, he bought a place for her to stay, and so forth. And it ended up being about $128,000 that he ended up assisting her with. And the house was sold after all said and done for $350,000.
I answer this, was that a good deal for her or not?
For her, it was outstanding.
Yeah.
She could care less about that house. She could care less about all the things in it. But he hired a mover to come in and take all the things and relocate her properly, and it was good for her.
The why is much more important than the how much.
So I'm sharing that story
No, that's
because
exactly what, that's a great
I come
point.
upon
Yeah.
a lot of different things like that where I have to act immediately and get to the right person. I'm not the right person yet to do the deals, to do the actual contracts and so forth, but I
Yeah.
speak to
My
whoever.
grandfather always says, not what you know, it's who you know.
Mhm.
So it's having those contacts, you're being of service to her, and getting her
yes.
where she needs to be. I mean, and definitely of service to the investor, and definitely of service to her. If you said to her, after she's down in Florida in her house, would you do that deal all over again? She'd say, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
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 And to boot, there was a nice fresh basket there of food and things in the house when she got there.
I mean, we had a house that the lady gave it to us for a song and dance. And her motivation, if anybody said, if somebody came in and said, well, let's just see if this is a balance of equities, they would say, absolutely not. But the why is so much more important. We had a house that the lady was raped in the house by her son. And she said, Jeremy, I'll give you a phenomenal deal in the house. I just don't want to ever hear that address again. I don't want to ever step foot anywhere near that place. I don't want to ever, just promise me I'll never hear about that house again, and we'll give you a phenomenal deal. And she gives a really, really good deal.
I could share stories back and forth after
We're gonna go to Bertucci's, so I hope everybody can come over to Bertucci's after this. We're gonna go hang out, and Tom's paying.
Just
No.
to add to that, I'm finishing a rehab near Pennypack Park in Northeast Philly, where the owner, he says, Tom, I know you're getting a good deal. This was after me going back and forth, terms, cash. My sister-in-law, brother, divorced, family, siblings, estate, blah, 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 crackhead, da. I know you're getting a good deal. Just take it all, get it out of here. Cash, quick, done. That's similar.
So that's the why. Again, the why is so much more important than the how much. Why are you selling this house? That's the first question that I always ask.
Oh yeah.
Why are you selling this? Or tell me about it first. And then, why? Okay, this sounds like a great house. Why would you sell it? Why would you sell a nice house like this? That's another thing Pete taught me. Pete Fortunato taught me that. I use to this day. It's great.
Wow.
And then you just listen. And listening to the people is what allows you to structure a deal that makes sense for them. it's often tough when you have somebody that says, no, I don't wanna say anything, and just make me an offer, make me an offer, make me an offer. And I typically say to people, I don't make offers, I make agreements, you know, so when somebody sends me a purchase and sale agreement, how dare you send me a purchase and sale agreement, I didn't agree to this. Yeah. Let's sit down and find out what works, so, yeah, so a lot of the deals can be made just because of the circumstances, and the circumstances, you know, of the people are much more important, so. Alright, so let's move on into, structuring deals. So I'll start with just the simple way to structure deals is, you know, you need to buy deals that your tenants can afford to pay back. Does that make sense? I mean, you need to get terms, and this is something you tell people. Say, look, I need to buy this house with terms that my tenants can afford to pay. And in order for you to provide affordable housing, you know, you can't have, you know, I mean, how long are you going to be in business if you have a house that's got a $1,700 a month, you know, note on it, and you know your rent is $1,000. You know, how many of those can you do, right? You know, there's some limit. So if you just talk to people like that and say, look, I'm going to rent this house out, and I plan on hanging on to it for the long term. So I'm not as concerned about, you know, beating you up for price. I definitely won't do that. I'm not one, and I always say that. I'm not one of those low ball cash offer guys. I'm just not one of those guys. If you want me to put on the low ball cash offer, I'm like hesitant to do it, but I mean, I'll do it if you really want me to. But what I want to do is make an offer, structure an offer that makes sense for you. And then you get into talking about what their needs are. So typically a deal is, you know, the best things are to get as little money down as you can put down, right? The less risk, the less money you put down, the less risk you have. And to get as small of a payment as you can get. Now, if you have a deal that's like $1 down and $1 a month, isn't that the best deal you can get? The problem is that they probably aren't going to accept a deal like that unless they really don't want the house. So you have to put together feasible deals. It's got to be feasible for them, feasible for you. So typically, a deal I'll put together is a little bit of money down, enough down that they know that I have some skin in the game, and then I'll structure that payment, and I'll show them why I can only pay so much per month. Now then the other thing that comes up is, let's say you extend the term of the loan, where you say like, well geez, you know, that's gonna go on for 23 years. And you know, I'll be dead by then. I get that a lot. I'll be dead by then. That's like, well geez, you know. You have children, don't you? Yeah, we have kids. Okay, well, you know, do you want to run out of money before you die, or would you rather take that money and pass it on to the kids and let them have that income stream? I mean, who wants to be on Social Security and then, you know, they get to 92 and they say, oh, that's it, no more monthly income. And then, you know, and they're 93 and then 94, you know, the cash flow situation. So you always explain to people that they want their cash flow, their payments to outlive them. They don't want to outlive their cash flow. That's a good selling point to a seller. Most of the, I never talk about interest with the seller. It typically doesn't come up. So, you know, I'm pretty much paying them. If it's a $300,000 house, I'll give you $1,000 a month for 300 months. And if you wanted to, if they say, well, I'm not, if they really are stuck on, I'm not going to live that long, then one of the things that I do is I will give them a balloon and say, okay, you know, 15 years from now, I'll just owe you the balance. And in 15 years, you hope the house will at least double in value once, right? And you can then, you know, do what you do, refinance or whatever you do. The other thing with the, you know, if they happen to gripe about this interest thing, you know, we often tell people like, look, we're not looking to get a loan from you. We're looking to buy your house. So we're not asking you to borrow any money. If we were borrowing money from you, well, surely we would pay you an interest rate. But in this case, we're not borrowing money from you. We're discussing the terms of sale of your house. And I will agree to buy your house for the $300,000 that it's worth if you only would, you know, if you only would do it for $1,000 a month. That's the terms of the sale of your house. You're not giving me a loan. They say like, well, I don't want to be the bank. No, banks have money. You have a house. You know, don't say it that harshly, but you know, look, I'm not looking to borrow money from you. I'm looking to buy your house. Here's the way I can buy your house. In this market, that speaks to people because nobody's buying houses, right? We should all be. So. Any questions about that?
No, I
Any
just-
objections you get on that? Yeah. Go ahead.
You're obviously dealing with people that own their homes outright.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I
What are you
mean,
gonna do with the mortgage that they have to pay off?
a lot of times, and earlier I was saying, a lot of times we can take over their mortgage payments. Other times, one of the techniques is a wraparound mortgage. A wraparound mortgage will allow us to make a payment to them, and that payment would be all inclusive of their payment to whoever the underlying, lender is.
You're gonna pass the acceleration clause?
I'm sorry?
You're gonna go past the acceleration clause in the contract?
Yeah, I bought plenty of houses subject to the mortgage, and never, ever, ever, ever had a bank call a loan due because I bought it. Never had it happen, and I don't know of anybody that has. And the only time I've heard of somebody that had a loan call due on them is because the payments weren't being made. Now, if we get back to 12–15% interest rates, and you have a 2.2%, Obama making home affordable loan, they might have a case to say like, but then they'd have to go in front of a judge and keep a straight face while they say, oh no, we're not doing this because we want a higher return. So there is like the wraparound mortgage technique. The other thing with the due on sale clause and houses is if it's really like an issue, if it's really a stumbling stone for people, you can buy the house on a contract. You can buy it on an installment sale. So you can say it's kind of like a layaway program. Like I'll pay you $300,000 for your house, and I'll give you $1,000 a month. Out of that $1,000, you pay your mortgage, and I don't even get title until the layaway is paid off, essentially. And I sold my previous primary residence. I sold that way, where I have a Countrywide, now Bank of America loan on the house. I refinanced it and got a Countrywide loan. Then I sold the house to people who they couldn't get their own financing, so I sold it to them on a lease option. A lease with an option to buy it. And anybody know Section 121, the IRS code, Section 121, is the sale of your personal residence. You can sell your personal residence as long as you've lived in it for 2 of the last 5 years. It's code Section 121. It's the best tax code in the world. You can sell your personal residence.
Tax free.
Tax paid. It's not tax free. It's tax paid by exclusion. But you sell your personal residence, you live in it 2 of the last 5 years, or 720 days out of the last 5 years. It doesn't have to be even consecutive, and a single person can exclude $250,000 a gain. A married person can exclude $500,000 in gain. There's even a case in California where three gay guys had a house, and they were, I don't know, it doesn't matter. 3 guys were in the house, and they each took $250,000 exclusion because all 3 of them owned 1/3 interest in the house, so they got a $750,000 exclusion in California. So that's a phenomenal. I mean, that beats tar off of Roth IRAs, 1031 exchanges. Move every 2 years. Yeah. You just have to have a spouse that likes money more than they like not moving. So that's the. So the point of that story. Can anybody tell I have enough ADD to diagnose 2 people? The point of that story was that I needed to sell this house. For me to have lived in the house and sold it 2 of the last 5 years. Well, the moment you move out of your house, you got 3 years to sell it, right? So the moment I go one day after 3 years, I either pay taxes or I have to move in with my tenants for a day. If I go 2 weeks, I got to move in with my tenants for 2 weeks, right? So we're getting up on the deadline on this house, and I was about to blow up my 121 exclusion. And what I did was I changed it from a lease option to an installment sale. So essentially, I wrapped my existing financing with Countrywide or Bank of America with this installment sale, which was I'll agree to buy the house for you on a contract over time. So that allowed me to, from the IRS perspective, that allowed me to freeze the sale of the house. And at that moment in time, 2 days before my 121 exclusion was about to expire, that house was sold. Now, I didn't get any cash out of that, but the house was sold from a timestamp perspective. Now, when they actually refinance it and cash me out of the house, I'll realize the profit. But if I waited and blew it up and sold it to them 5 days later, I would have had to pay taxes on. I bought the house for $155, sold it for $325. So it would have been a big tax, windfall there. So that's just one of the ways with a wraparound mortgage or an installment sale that you can, a lender, I guess a lender could say that installment sale could be construed as, the deed still stays in your name, but it could be construed as a sale from a due on sale perspective. But again, I've never run into that situation. It was a very long answer to a short question.
You just replaced your option that you gave the tenant buyer with the installment sale contract, which made it sold.
Yeah, they exercised their option.
And bought it.
And bought the land
And then that just
contract,
happened to be
essentially,
payment until.
Right.
Cool.
So it's pretty much, I turn lease to own into owner financing.
Got it.
And I'm not gonna give you the deed until you give me all the money.
Correct, right.
But at this point, it's not like they have an option to buy it.
No,
They
they
have an
bought it.
obligation to buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I have an obligation to sell it.
Right.
So, question?
I'm actually dealing with an opportunity right now where the seller is, willing to be, creative with financing, willing to allow me to make the payments. They have a loan on the property right now, but they don't want the loan in their name anymore. I don't want my name either. So,
So what's the reason for them not wanting the loan in their name? What's the fear? There's a fear behind that, right?
Yeah, no, I know the reason, because he's buying another house.
Right.
And the lender said, you can't have this loan, in your name if you want this loan for this house.
Yeah, that goes along with the financing being tighter these days. We had that, Justin, did we do a deal with those people that, there's a deal I was buying subject to a mortgage, but it was subject to a loan modification. So I said, I'll buy your house, not subject to your current payment, but I'll help you modify the loan, and after you modify the loan, I'll take over your payments. You remember that one? So like, we took a payment from like $10.95 down to like $6.50.
Right.
And for $6.50, I'll take over those payments.
Right, he has that option as well. We talked about that.
Modify it down?
He said, look, I can modify it down, and I said, that's great, it's even a better deal for me.
Exactly, yeah.
However,
But they're in the same situation. I have an option to buy the house, but I still don't own the house. Because they can't sell that house and go get another loan as long as it's in their name. And the lenders are saying, and you mortgage guys can vouch for this probably, the lenders are saying that you can't rent it out. We won't even consider the rental income. I don't know if this is still the case, but we won't even consider the rental income to you unless you've already a professional landlord where you've had it rented for a year. Is that still true?
You need 30% equity.
30% equity, which we
And
don't.
a 1-year history. So like with your situation, if the person's gonna make the payments for 12 consecutive months and you can document them, then they can exclude it. But obviously for your situation, they need to buy now and they need to get rid of the loan now.
And didn't they add also the 6 months cash reserve, each month payment, the reserve cash?
Well, yeah, usually if
You have to have that too.
if you have several properties, you need to have 6 months of reserves.
We're talking about people selling their primary residence, because this is what used to happen. We used to do this all the time.
Oh yeah.
We used to do it where people sell their primary residence, and I would always tell them, look, it's much easier for you to have 2 loans in your name than it is for me to have 12 in mine.
Well, you could have a pending sale excluded 4 years ago. Like you could buy a new house with your existing house just up for sale, and it wasn't a big deal. Where now
Right,
it's
no,
got to
yeah.
settle, or the way to get around it is if you can afford both payments. If on paper I can afford both payments, then it can be excluded.
Yeah, so that's something that's a challenge we ran into with that. Now, part of that is, okay, so if I can buy it creatively, subject to their modification, what I'd have to do is, and Justin and I talked about what the next step was. The next step was find them a house that I can then buy subject to the payments and let them, I would still be in the middle, but let them buy a house with owner. Like if I can negotiate owner financing on somebody else's house, I could then let them move into that house and then take over the loan. But you'd have to negotiate it on the other house. They'd have to not use institutional financing on the new house.
You have to have
They
it
can-
set up.
But that's a good deal. I mean, find a house that they want that's behind on payments and say, we'll take over your payment book.
oh, probably,
But, that's a
there's
creative,
lot more
yeah.
to it. I mean, they already found a house.
They want that house. Yeah. That's the problem when it's an owner
They
occupied.
have one they're in already, and this one's an investment property that they wanna get rid of. They have one that they're gonna rent that they're leaving. And this one's an investment property, the one that I wanna buy, that already has tenants in it, already making payments. So it's, they were already told that they can't get the loan for their house.
And that's all the banking thing. So that's kind of why we're here talking about owner financing and creative financing strategies, because the banks are holding up the works, for lack of a better term. So, I mean, that's That's why I've always done creative financing. I was always taught, I think when I first like learned from Ron LeGrand, like the first seminar I ever went to, he was saying there's only 2 ways to get in trouble in this business: write big checks and sign your name on dotted lines. Because if you don't write big checks, you don't sign your name on dotted lines, you're pretty good. So.
Yeah, and people didn't really understand that until today. They see what these banks have done to investors and done to homeowners.
I've seen portfolios of millions of dollars. We're dealing with a guy that had a portfolio of like $4.2 million, all bank loans, all cross-collateralized, and he owned his home free and clear, right? Owns his house free and clear, no mortgage on it. He's got all these other institutional debt, cross-collateralized, co-signed by him and his wife. And guess who's on the deed of his personal residence?
Okay.
Him and his wife. So him and his wife are on the deed. Him and his wife co-signed this cross-collateralized loans. So he's got this $2.8 million foreclosure problem, right? So what do?
Well, the house is toast.
Get a judgment against him, foreclose on his personal residence. First, foreclose on his personal residence.
Right.
He owned it free and clear, and they foreclosed on it. So I mean, because he owned it in his personal name.
There's builders whose parents co-signed some of their building, and you know,
Yeah, there was
10 lots foreclosed upon the parents.
So I don't know. I mean, you know, for them to get this new house without selling their own house, that's really the problem you're trying to solve, right?
Right, exactly.
So.
Another challenge, so they're in Florida.
Yeah.
But the house that I want to buy is in Philly.
Can you buy the new house for them?
The new one, that they want to buy in Florida.
Is there a way to buy the new house without getting institutional financing and leave their institutional financing in place? Is there a seller involved, or is it a bank, or is it
It's a builder.
builder?
The house is sitting there, it's
Perfect.
Oh,
Builder's
he'll take.
perfect.
He'll take.
The
Yeah.
builder's
If a dollar
perfect.
bill goes across the table.
The builder's a perfect one. Yeah.
The house is sitting there empty, it's a builder, it's a
Buy it from the
development.
builder with the builder. We let the builder leave. Now they have a construction loan, but I tell you what, the lender that has the construction loan, that is the person you want to go to.
Lender.
Not the lender. The lender who lent the builder that money has a construction loan out there that they need to get back, and they would much rather have an end user
With a new mortgage.
with a mortgage on that place instead of a construction loan to a builder.
Because
That's,
they're a
you know,
commercial lender
yeah.
too, and they will be able to hold the paper on that, owner occupied
That's,
loan,
yeah,
and they go.
and they can make the decision, especially if it's a portfolio commercial lender, it's like a
Mhm.
portfolio lender, they'll do that deal all day long. And, you know, I mean, because, you know, what's their alternative? What's the definition of a builder? Somebody that files bankruptcy every 7 years.
Or another way might be the financial institution, the traditional guideline is to have 12 months of consecutive payments to omit the rental property up here. You wouldn't want to do it, but you could put 12 months worth of payments up front and then probably convince the
I
bank
asked you that.
to omit it.
That was the first thing I asked you. They're like, yeah, they need to see 12 months of payments. I said, what if I just pay 12 months up front? And that was one of the underwriting things.
Well, once again, it's just a
It's
suggestion.
always changed. It's always changed.
But your bank was Bank of America, which, you know,
I forget, was it?
yeah, I mean, that's
I
like.
forget who their loan was through.
It's like talking to this.
Right.
One of the things I just wanted to touch on that we didn't really talk about is just think about and we talked about like the different things that you can negotiate, like the different currencies that you can pay in, you know, freeing up time with the management, you know, giving people the tax benefits, giving them some of these other benefits and keeping some for yourself. But, you know, the other thing is to think about all the different, when you buy a house and you have a promissory note, what are all the components of that promissory note? You have like an amount, right? We already talked about that amount. That amount could be, if there's no interest involved, the amount could be a higher amount. But there's also like the time factor. We're actually about to put a deal in on an estate duplex, and there's 4 heirs to the estate. So the first thing is you got to get 4 people to agree upon something, right? It's always a hard thing to do.
Right.
So I say, well, I was talking to Phil about it. I said, let's not get them to agree on anything. Let's put an offer where they can each choose what they want. So they can say, okay, you can have 30 grand cash, or you can have $4,000 a year for 15 years. Was it 15, something like that?
Yeah.
So you could each have $4,000 a year for 15 years, or you could take 30 grand in cash and let each 4 circle which one they want, and then they don't have to decide collectively they can decide individually.
They just
So you're
divide
just
it up
kind of
and give
parsing it up, it's like four notes.
Right.
It's the same thing that we would do on any free and clear house. We would offer a low bulk cash offer, and we would offer a
No
very,
cash down.
very close, a no cash down, you know, no interest, seller finance loan, very close to full price. So all he did in this deal was he knew there was 4 people who probably don't get along, right? So he gave the same offer just to each of the 4, so that the 2 that are struggling could take the
Cash.
30,000 cash, and the 2 that are professionals and doing well can take the seller financing, and they don't have to even talk.
Make the Roth
And we're
payment
giving
to
them
the
a
kid every
retail,
year.
we're giving them retail asking price for the house, so it's a retail asking price offer.
Yeah.
Full price offer, but we just said, look, if the full price offer is based on all of you taking payments, so if any of you, if you all take the cash, we're ended up getting it at half price, right?
Wow.
So if 2 of you take cash, we're getting it at 75 cents on the dollar, but the rest of it's owner financing. And then the other part of that is, instead of giving them monthly payments, like who says you have to give monthly payments? I mean, I have tenants that pay me every 2 weeks instead of every month, right? So one of the ideas with that was, the lady who died was like in her 90s, who owned this duplex. The kids they're in their, like, you know, the kids have grandkids.
They're up there, yeah.
They're up there, so the kids have grandkids. So they have grandkids, so I said, well, all right, let's just make the offer instead of giving them so much per month, because you have to divide it 4 ways, and it's gonna be this like little number. So our offer to them is, we'll give you $4,000 every year on December 1st. So every year, December 1st, we'll give you $4,000. Now think about somebody that has grandkids, what that might mean to them.
Oh, yeah.
Tonka gets, right?
And then he comes back 5 minutes later and he goes, wait a minute, let's give him the 4,000 when the taxes are due.
Well, no, there's five rental properties. There's five rental properties. There's 4 kids. So they each get a house, and then they got this one they have to split. So first of all, I mean, they're each getting a house anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then at that point I said, well, geez, if there's 4 other houses, we could make the payment when the tax bill is due for the real estate taxes on these other free and clear houses. But I'm thinking, like, nah, that's not good. You know, saying, hey, pay your tax bill with this versus buy your grandkids toys with this.
Right.
Different conversation.
Well,
so that's, you know, just
sometimes
a
you
different way to.
can build so much into a deal that nobody understands it anymore. So it's,
Oh, then you see the
I like to-
headlights that they're,
Yeah. Keep it simple. Keep it nice and simple. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
So.
You know, the other thing that's with the seller financing is important to know is the tax implications to them. It's important to know, you know, that if they have a place that's long-term capital gains, you know, they have to recapture all the depreciation that they took over the years, and then they have, you know, in this right now it's 15% capital gains. But if they get it all in a lump sum, they got to pay all that money in one check, boom, that year, right? If they take payments over time, they only have to pay the capital gains on the money as they receive it. So I mean, it's important to know the tax code as much as you need to, not only for yourself, but for the other person across the table. Because if you can show them how they could actually make a tax preferred transaction, that's some value that you're bringing to the table that nobody else is talking to them about.
Absolutely.
So learn about what's in it for them with taxes. So learn about retirement accounts, learn about their pension plans, learn about things like that, so you know what, you know, Social Security and how that affects them. What about a situation where you're selling, where mom and dad are going into a nursing home? You think if they had a lump sum of cash in the bank, who do you think is the first person going to reach out and get that
Nursing
cash?
home.
The nursing home, right. So if you structure a deal with them where the note isn't that valuable to the nursing home, that note could be there just to preserve their estate. Say no payments for 120 years, you know, whatever. And what's the nursing home going to do with that note? Nothing. You know, I'm exaggerating, but the idea there is you know, you talk to the kids about, do mom and dad need cash for the nursing home? Well, we can qualify them for assistance as long as they don't have too much income. All right, so me giving you a big monthly payment is too much income. All right, we can work with that. You know, giving them a low income or no income with it, and having a future balloon might be a way to do it. You know, so you have to think about all of it. You know, and that's like, okay, well, what's going to be good for you to go to this nursing home? What's not going to be good? A chunk of cash is definitely not going to be good. A high income stream is probably not going to be good. You want to qualify for as much Medicaid, whatever it is that you can. So just knowing, you know, what are all the parameters there. So. Any other questions about owner financing or anything that I haven't touched on that you want to talk about? Back here first, and then you.
Yeah, when you do a wholesale deal, and, you know, you sell it to a cash buyer because, you know, typically selling to, say, an FHA buyer, it's very difficult to get paid on the HUD in the middle, right?
Get paid on the HUD on
Your wholesale fee.
a wholesale fee. I don't know. I mean, that's you know, it depends on what you do. Like you have, you know, there's people that have the assignment fees and do an FHA buyer, but you know, one of the things you can have is you can release a cloud on the title. So if you, like a lot of the wholesalers will record an option to buy the property, whatever it is, and if they say, well, you can't assign that option, well, what if the seller were to pay you to cancel the option?
Right.
Or cancel your like I have a contract with a seller, what about getting paid a cancellation fee to cancel that contract because they found, you know, I'll pay you $5,000 to cancel your contract for $45 if you let me sell to this buyer for $52.
So if you take that theory to like a sandwich deal, right? And, you know, you get an option and you move it to a buyer who winds up buying it, say, in 2 years. And you wanna, let's say your contract price was $100,000 and the end buyer is paying $125,000. And the end buyer has an FHA loan. How exactly do you get paid that $25,000 in that situation?
Outside of contract.
No, I mean,
Because the mortgage company.
well, if you're buying an option, if they're buying an option, they can buy the option anytime. They're buying a piece of personal property.
Anytime.
So, I mean, I had a deal with an FHA lender where I bought an option. I reserved an option from him. I bought a house for, I was all 110 from a bankruptcy court. I put 25 in rehab into it, so I'm in it for 135. It was worth 175, but I sold it for 135. Sold it for exactly what I had into it, but the kid didn't have enough down payment money. So I said, well, you know, could he sell something that he had? Could he sell something for down payment money? Like, you wouldn't believe me trying to get this to the underwriters. But you know, so he said, like, look, I said, look, I'm going to sell you the house, but I'm going to sell it to you only for a little while. I'm not going to sell you the house forever. I want to buy it back from you when you're done with it. So I basically said, I'll sell it to you for 135, way under market value, if you give me the right to buy it back for 150. I reserved an option for, you know, 30 years. So, so the thing is, they're looking at this option and saying, well, that option to me is valued at $15,000. So $15,000 was his down payment. And they go, well, where's the $15,000? They go, no. The $15,000 isn't his down payment. The option, he sold me an option. Him giving me the option as his down payment, that's what he is. So I was trying to explain this to underwriters. I said, look, if the guy had a Corvette, could he sell the Corvette and raise 15 grand? Yes. Okay. But if he had a Corvette and I wanted a Corvette, could I just take his Corvette as a down payment? We talked about that earlier. And he said, yeah, we just have to make sure the value's in line with it. I said, okay. Well, if he sells me an option on a property he's about to own, he sells me an option to buy back the place he's about to own, as long as it's a bona fide, like it's any prudent business person would actually exercise that option. It can't be like, I'll buy it back from you for $1 million, you know, gajillion. But in this case, it's worth 175, and I had the option to buy it back for 150. Is that a good thing to exercise? Yeah. So at that point, I said, all right. So instead of me giving him $15,000 cash for the option, he's giving me the Corvette. He's giving me the option as his down payment on this house. So there's a situation where actually I got paid, or he got the down money on a HUD with an FHA, and his down payment was $15,000, value of an option. It was right on the HUD. So I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do, but people don't understand. So you have to actually, I was on the phone for like an hour with the underwriter, twice. So, yeah, I mean, you have to find a title company that knows what they're doing in order to make it happen. And it's not just like, you know, papers moving under the table, you know, hiding stuff under rocks and winking 14 times. You know, this is, you say, look, here's what I want to do. Show me what the guidelines are. Let's look at the guidelines and study the guidelines and figure out how we can do it within the guidelines.
What title company would that be around here?
There's several, there's a lot of title companies.
You have a deal put together, give us a call.
Okay.
The right person for the deal.
We'll give you the right person for the deal you've got.
My title attorney is the same guy that Bart Gladstein uses.
Oh,
That
okay.
Tower Investments.
Yeah, Tower.
And then, you know, I got other title companies that I use. Depends on the situation. Another questions you had? Yeah, well, I'll be next time. Go ahead.
what are the property insurance issues when you buy a property subject to, or sell one subject to? Because the property insurance that the existing mortgage company is making payments to is protecting their interest, and it's based upon a certain owner actually living in the house. So who carries property insurance when a property is sold subject to?
So the owner of record is the person that should be the primary insured on a title policy, or on an insurance policy, homeowner's insurance policy.
Right.
So whoever the owner of record is. Now typically when we're buying it subject to a mortgage, if I'm buying it from the Jones family, I hold title and trust just because I don't like Pennsylvania saying that I need to give them $100 and their permission for me to form an LLC. It's like, forget Pennsylvania. Let me go back to kings and queens and common law. So I just hold title in a trust, and the trust is something that I just hit print on my printer versus having to pay Pennsylvania and waiting and advertising and seeing if the name's taken. So I buy a property in trust. I name the trust after them, so it'd be the Jones Family Trust. So by naming it after them, it's it's kind of like just homage to them, but it also it's the last thing that the seller wants and that I want is for the bank to say, hey, I'm going to call this loan due. So.
Oh, name it after the seller.
Yeah, we just name it after the seller. I name it after the seller. If it's a subject to deal, I name it after the seller. If it's a non-subject to deal, I just name it after the street. The public
call it due anyway, Jeremy.
Yeah, they can call it due anyway. If they want to call it due, they call it due.
Because of the trust, that's.
If they want to call it due, they'll call it due.
The idea is just to create the feeling that property was transferred into
security.
the trust, which happens to be the name of the person who has the loan.
I mean, some people actually even make like the initial beneficiary of the trust be the seller, and then they transfer the beneficial interest later. I don't even do that.
You're just keeping consistency.
I just keep it consistent. I just buy in the name of the trust and be done with it. And what I do is I then get title insurance in the name of the trust. I'm sorry, I keep saying title insurance. I get hazard insurance in the name of the trust. I name the sellers as an additional insured, but not a lost payee, because I don't want a check cut where they have to sign it. Now, if I'm buying a subject to deal, I typically have a limited power of attorney anyway, so I can sign for them in any dealings with that house. So, I just don't want to have it where they cut the check to the trust. The bank also is a signature on that check, and then the seller. And God forbid I gotta go track down the seller or something to do it. I like just, I don't name them as an addition, as a lost payee, just as additional insured. So I have the trust as a primary. I have the previous seller as an additional insured, but not a lost payee. The bank is in there as a lost payee, the mortgagee clause, whatever they do. And once I get that new policy, I then send that to them as a replacement for the old policy and say, here's the new policy. And then when I'm getting the policy, I get the policies in the mail, right? The policies in the mail is addressed to the trust. And then I get another policy addressed to the seller come into my office or my P.O. box or whatever. Typically it's my P.O. box. So then I just circle the property address. I circle the seller's names. I circle the insurance policy number, and I just fax it on over to them. And then once they call back in and say, do you have the new insurance policy? Yep, we got it. And call the old insurance company and cancel the sellers. Because the new policy is a landlord policy now, so it's a rental property for us. The new policy, we're making a landlord policy. So on a subject to deal, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say insurance is probably the hardest thing, and it's a 4. But aside from that, stuff's pretty easy. I mean, it's not too hard. Once you do it once, my insurance agents know it now. Like they know exactly how to do it because they've done it. And they're like, oh, okay, I see this. Because really, the due on sale will happen if the insurance is canceled. The due on sale thing will come up. So what's going on? Not due on sale, but what's going on with this thing? There's no insurance on it. So they'll put that forced placed insurance. We've had that happen to us a couple times. So that help? Or
yeah.
Any questions on that?
I didn't digest all that as you were saying it, so I don't.
Bertucci's right. We'll go over it in Bertucci's.
You give him a couple of beers and pizza, and then he slows down.